is the Panic Then Process podcast, where we find ourselves somewhere between clinical and chaotic, sharing lessons that we didn't learn in our academic textbooks.
We're two MACP Yorkville graduates giving their take on the program, practicum, and all things therapy.
I'm Izzy.
And I'm Karen, and this is Panic Then Process.
Episode 6, we think, of Panic and Process, Panic Then Process. Yeah, baby. We're
Sometimes it's
laughing
then,
because
sometimes it's and. Yeah, that's the way it goes.
Yes, we're laughing because that's just what our experience is currently. Okay, today we've kind of picked out a topic of imposter syndrome, kind of broadening the lens a little bit, less, MACP specific, although we'll talk about practicum and coursework and such, but more this like idea of how to manage imposter syndrome, normalize it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What the heck it is and how we all experience it and what we did with it, right? Because
$100.
there's a lot of podcasts out there who touch on imposter syndrome and all the science and all the stuff
Mm-hmm.
behind it. Absolutely. And they're fabulous. Check them
Mm-hmm.
out.
Mm-hmm.
Today is kind of more about normalizing it
Mm-hmm.
and our experience of it. So hopefully you don't feel as alone
Mm-hmm.
and kind of what we did with that. Hey?
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
I love that. You summarized that so beautifully. And as we were kind of figuring out how to do this might be a 2 episode thing. We might just see how we go. But maybe we'll start at the beginning in terms of like getting the acceptance, going into school. Like when for you, Karen, do you feel like imposter syndrome or that like discomfort and oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing started to show up or
Oh,
or didn't, right? That could happen too.
It's funny you mentioned that because as we were planning this whole thing, and I've been thinking over the last few days about imposter syndrome and
Mm,
experiences I've had, and asking people in my life what their experiences have been of it.
mm.
And my husband was like, "Imposter syndrome? What? What's
Never
that?
heard
What
of
do you
it.
mean?" And I'm like,
Mm.
mind blown. What are you talking about? You don't experience imposter syndrome. That's like what I live with so
Yeah.
often. I couldn't even believe it. That blew my mind. And he's like, "Oh, well, yeah, I guess in some things, sure, but it's not like a thing." And I was like, "Wow, that's amazing. I
Incredible.
love that." Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway,
Incredible.
so I digress.
Hmm.
Imposter syndrome. Totally. As I mentioned, I am a person who definitely deals with imposter syndrome and have
Mm,
for a long time. Definitely in therapy through the program, before applying to the program, all that stuff.
mm,
But it's also part of a really deep and healthy, I think, respect and understanding, consciousness of the potential impact we have on
mhm,
lives. And that
mhm,
is so massive, right? There are real human beings that we
mhm,
are impacting in this field. And so, like, that's a deep thing, right?
mm, mhm.
Yeah. But what
Yeah,
about
like you're
you?
describing this like spectrum of imposter syndrome, right? Like this, and almost appreciation for that part of you that's recognizing imposter syndrome.
Oh, Izzy's an IFS therapist, by the way. If you hadn't noticed with that
Can
little
you
parts work
tell?
language, I love that. Well done,
Um,
you.
and so there's that part of you that's recognizing the weight of it, and hopefully you can, as a collective, get to the point of recognizing it without it running our bus, right? Without
Oh,
it being like the main piece as we're in session, we're like, oh my gosh, am I doing it right? Am I
yeah.
showing up? Can I be successful? Am I helping these people, right? And so often you get into session and do that. And again, yes, I'm an IFS therapist, so this is what I do, right? From that lens is like, can I check that part and be able to say, okay, like, I'm not a fixer here.
Yeah.
I'm a witnesser.
Okay, I just have to say I'm having like full body chills as you say that. So this is apparently free therapy for Karen today as we're
Yes.
going through this. Thank you,
Yes.
Izzy. That was beautiful. And that's exactly right. That can
Mhm.
be such a big part of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And I just have to say, I think it's maybe worth kind of outlining that bus metaphor, which I
No.
love me a ride the
Sure.
bus metaphor. That's one of my absolute favorite. I use it all the time in therapy too,
Mm,
because it's so impactful. no
Mm.
matter what we're applying it to. And I think it could be really helpful for listeners. What do you think? No matter if they're
Yeah.
MACP specific or just life in general and you're listening. Do you want
Yeah,
to
you want to go for it?
outline
You
it?
want me to do it?
Go for it. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're the
Yeah. So it's
bus driver.
this idea that you can recognize parts of yourself that are showing up and impacting you. And it's this idea that these parts become the bus driver, right? So all that you see, you perceive, you behave, you move through the world through this lens of the driver of whatever part that is, an anxious part, an imposter syndrome part, a fear part, um, self-critical part. And, all those can kind of link and blah, 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 blah. They can connect and have alignments. But ultimately, it's this idea that your part is running your bus. And so, can you recognize when that's happening and kind of ground yourself back into this, oh, okay, like, can I soften that part of me that wants to fix? Can I soften that part of me that wants to find a solution?
Hmm.
Recognize it. Yes, of course I want to help this person. Of course I want them to be well and I want to do everything that I can do. And there are limits to what I can do.
Hmm.
So can part soften back and maybe just sit in the one seat back and monitor what I'm doing? Right?
Beautiful.
Check in, validate, have an understanding of these parts. And that's where this like, recognizing it, running your bus, being the motivator, the view in which you see the world.
I love it. Beautiful. Absolutely. That's exactly right. There are no bad parts of ourselves, right? Check
Mm,
out that book. It's a good book.
hmm
There are no bad parts. We all have all these parts that show up within
hmm
us, and they just can't drive the bus, as you say. They can be on the bus. We love them on the bus. Have a seat on the
hmm
bus. You're important. You serve a purpose. We want you here. And
100%.
you just can't drive it, though. My true big S self, me, I'm
hmm
going to drive the bus,
hmm
not the fear part. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting as you're talking about your husband and him not noticing his imposter syndrome or not really having like an awareness of it. And I think that's part of it too. Like in this role, as we step into the MACP program and beyond, most of us are very self-aware
Yeah.
people. And so that really leans into this like you feel it more. You're more aware of it. You have an understanding of that discomfort. Maybe you don't name it as
Yeah.
imposter syndrome. Maybe it's something else for you, and that's I'm cool with that. We don't always need to have labels. Um, but there is that awareness that is a byproduct of what we do that almost
Absolutely.
makes it harder to move through at times.
Beautifully said. You hit the
Mm,
nail on the head. That is such a big thing. And that self-awareness that is so cultivated in grad
hmm
school, which is so imperative
hmm
to this field, to being a therapist, to honestly to being a healthy, um, feeling well, um, individual, let's say
hmm
also. Because with that awareness of those parts of us or whatever it is, we're able to then work with that, notice it,
hmm
appreciate it, recognize it, use some compassion towards it,
hmm
and move through it, not
hmm
let it drive our entire decisions, behaviors, reactions, responses, all that kind of stuff.
hmm
So I love that you touch on that. I think MACP does a really good job of cultivating that, anyways. But also, there are ways to do that in your own life, whether with a therapist or without. And it is so prevalent to that. And the other side of it, that flip side of the coin, is that it can be really difficult times because we have that much more awareness. You're absolutely right.
hmm
That's a big thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
which we
when
all came to. Sorry, Karen.
that's
I know I
okay.
want to follow this all the way.
Let's do it. Bring it
Which
home.
we all came to this because you had mentioned like this compassion and this piece of you that can recognize that imposter syndrome is also a part that's flagging how important our job is, right? And so our role is in people's lives. And so having that compassion towards that and being able to be like, yeah, like this is hard stuff. And this is can be really uncomfortable.
Mm,
Um, which is kind of where all of this conversation and sidebar parts, although still connected, kind of came from. Um, And so for you, you had mentioned, yeah, imposter syndrome was showing up in the coursework part. Do you want to speak to that a little bit more and how that
Yeah, for sure. And
was for
I
you?
think, what you were just talking about is also really important in helping us manage that imposter syndrome,
Mm,
right? So that can be a really great way for anyone who is dealing with a little bit of that
mm,
to help yourself through it, definitely. Yeah, coursework, I have a not a huge perfectionist part of me, but it's definitely there, and a high achieving part of me, and procrastinating part of me. We've talked a little bit
mm,
about this before. That kind of shows up, and I noticed it with coursework because there was that fear of not being enough, not being good
mm,
enough, not getting the marks I wanted, not I was already working in the field. What if it came out that I actually really sucked at
mhm,
this, right? Like I couldn't do it. I wasn't good. And so for me, that was a very scary
mm.
possibility.
And that's
So,
so interesting that you name that almost added pressure. Would you feel like that's a
mm,
fair assessment of like having been
definitely.
in the field, stepping into the program? And I remember in our practicum, the director saying to you, well, I trust you. You have had lots of experience. And I remember you saying, and we didn't really even know each other at this time. Like we were really just getting to know each other. I remember you saying, oh, no, no, like, no, I don't know that much more. Like I remember you being like this like coy, like humble person that's like, no. And I was like, I don't know what I thought now that I'm recalling it, but I that stuck out to me. This piece of you being like, no, no. And I'm like, actually, like, that's amazing. Like that you have been in the field, that you're doing this, that you have knowledge. And I wonder if that was an imposter part. What do you think?
Mm. So it's so interesting because as you talk about this, and again, this is so much of my imposter syndrome is popping up for me in this
Oh,
episode, and all I
yay.
want to do is deflect it, which is another sign that you may be
Oh,
dealing with some imposter syndrome if you're
yeah.
lots, deflecting compliments or deflecting things like that.
Mm,
Not always, but it can be part of it. So I can
mm,
feel that part of me get very, um, not triggered, just like it's on right now
mm,
as we talk about this.
mm,
And also the part of me that wants to kind of downplay my
mm,
experience and my knowledge. And so, yes, I did have more knowledge and more experience than someone fresh out of grad school coming right in,
mm,
which, I was very lucky with that.
mm,
Again, I feel like I have to preface all of this, justify it. Hello,
mm,
imposter syndrome. And at the same time, part of why I remember those conversations, part of why I wanted to do that was I was here to learn. I
yeah.
wanted to learn.
Yeah.
So I had experience, and that's beautiful.
Mm,
But I really wanted to get into it and do it well and do it correctly and do it to the
mm,
best of my ability. Hello, perfectionist part of me and
mm,
whatnot, right? Again,
mhm,
coupled with that realization that we, again, we said this before, we hold people's hearts in our hands, we hold
mm,
lives in our hands, we have impact. We have to be very conscious of that and careful with
mm,
that.
mhm.
So it's a lot, right?
It's a lot. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm hearing you say that as you're like, I actually just wanted no one to notice that I have ever had experience because I wanted to be
Yeah.
that fresh canvas and take on as much as I could take on and learn
Mm-hmm.
as much as I could learn to be the best version if it's not what I was doing.
Oh man,
And I can appreciate that.
I'm
Yeah.
feeling all kinds of called out today
I
in a good
appreciate
way,
that.
but I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, okay, podcast peeps, we're getting vulnerable today. So
This is actually
hoopta,
a
hang
therapy
on,
session.
right?
So I will get to
Good for
my
me to be
half
in the
in a couple of
CT.
minutes.
Yeah, that's right. Send me your bill.
And no, and I think but I think all this is so real, right? All
Mm-hmm.
of these pieces and your experiences because I will say that I didn't have my foot in like the therapy, like in what we're doing now world. I wasn't a counselor, I wasn't a peer support for people. Like I was kind of, I always knew that this is what I wanted to do, that this felt so aligned with me and like how I wanted to move through the world. And I did not have imposter syndrome, probably, or maybe didn't notice it until we got to practicum because I've said this before. I remember sitting in the first course and just being like, fuck it, this is what I was meant to do. Like this is everything that I was meant to do.
I love that.
And I know what I'm doing. And yes, were there some courses and I'm like, this is complete BS. I'm typing something on the paper and I have no idea. Yeah, for sure. But I never attributed that to me and my ability to have success in this
I love
field.
that.
And so it was a different experience for me than what you're describing. And again, it's a spectrum and there's lots of variables.
Mm-hmm.
It was really when I showed up with my first client that I was like, oh, or like was preparing for my first clients. And I'm like, okay, wait, what? You want me to, I have to? Like this kind of like,
Yeah.
oh no, I
Yeah.
don't know that I can, right?
We're all of a sudden the ones like in the driver's seat, so to
Yeah.
speak, of a session. Now, again, clients
Yes,
drive it.
I'm with
However,
you.
there's a kind of like an unwritten felt sense of as a therapist when a client shows up, you're the one kind of beginning and leading, and there is, though the client leads things, you also are maneuvering in the background, putting pieces together and thinking about clinically where we need to go or what may be helpful and all these other pieces. So,
And let's just say what a nuanced way to describe that because
oh,
it is
so
so nuanced.
much.
Like you're
Hmm.
like trying to, but there is no like definition of what we do
I
because
know.
everyone does it differently and
Totally.
everyone views it differently. And also like the expectation of the client matters. And so like let's just name that as you're like, trying to come up like what a nuanced thing to try to describe.
Totally. Absolutely. And
Sidebar.
and there's so much more even in that,
Yes.
right? There really
100%.
is.
Hmm.
Which is beautiful. And
Hmm.
also why it's more than just talking, right?
Yes. Yes.
But so back to kind of your experience of not really noticing or feeling imposter syndrome until that first practicum bit and
Hmm.
really just feeling so aligned with this is your purpose and this is my
Yeah.
calling and this is what I want to be doing and I'm going to go do that. I think that's brilliant. And I
Mm.
also want to stay curious with the fact
See,
that
here comes my therapy
I
session, folks.
wonder if I love it. I love it. It's so good to have therapists as
I
friends.
love
It
it.
really is.
Yes. Yeah.
I wonder if some of our differences in all this is also related, of course, to our experiences growing up,
Mm.
our teachings, our narratives in our home, in our
Mm.
head, our peer relationships, our family dynamics,
Hmm.
all of these things, right, can play a part in all of this. So it's
Totally.
so interesting to
Hmm.
hear the differences even within our own stuff, right? And we certainly don't have to get into that, but
Hmm.
um, side note, listeners, if you want to know more about that stuff, there's definitely lots from reputable resources on the internet, and we could even do an episode around that maybe one day. But
Yeah.
anyways, back into that.
Back
I
into it.
love that
Hmm.
you really kind of started to notice it in those first few sessions. So what was it like for you? How did you manage that?
Yeah. Great question. Um, oh,
Side note, folks, this is real. This is real thought and reflection process in real time. This is not
yeah.
scripted show. This is
No.
deep thoughts here. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, what was that like for me? Um, I think it was scary.
Mm.
It was uncomfortable. And I think it really did impact how I showed up in the therapeutic space. I had to rework because I think that I wasn't an IFS, I'll say this, I wasn't an IFS therapist when I started practicum. I really don't even know if I had an awareness at that time.
Mm.
We did more CBT, DBT, which again, fantastic in its own right, with its own people, with its own therapists.
Place for that too. Yeah.
Totally. Um, but then I got to this place post practicum aligned with a supervisor who does IFS, who works with the, demographic that I primarily work with. And I started to learn this part of me, and I think it's linked to the imposter syndrome that really did still have this view of being the fixer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that is so tied up for me that the imposter syndrome really impacted how I showed up in the therapeutic space as the fixer. Like I had the answers. And truth be told, I had a client who followed me post practicum, like sought me out after type of deal. And I really had to like consciously and actively work with them to change that narrative and dynamic in our relationship because I started to have this,
Interesting.
yeah, like she almost like they had this expectation of me that had been established because I felt this imposter syndrome and needing to overcorrect and over, you know, yeah. And so it's also, and I look back, and I'm noticing a very faint shame
Oh.
part too.
Mm.
It's like, oh, how shameful that you directed session and you gave her answers and you felt like this higher, more. And so I want to name that too, but it's all for me connected. This
Mm-hmm.
imposter, this fixer, this now recognizing that, oh, I'm just a gal. Yes, I've got a degree, but I'm just a gal.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna name some things and you're gonna say yay or nay to that.
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't always my initial approach, I think in part because of the imposter syndrome and this
Yeah.
feeling of needing to overcompensate for what I feel I didn't know or wasn't bringing to the table just as being
Mm-hmm.
present there.
Absolutely. And I love
Long-winded
that
way.
you named that. No, that was beautiful. I think, again, such a common experience for a
Mm,
lot of us. I think, firstly, a lot of us who come into this field have a very strong fixer part.
mm,
No research around that. I don't know. It's just
mhm.
something I wonder about.
Helper part, similarly, right?
Yes, absolutely. The kind of the needing to mediate in a way,
Mm-hmm.
almost
Mm-hmm.
things, right? And of course there's always those that are not, and that's cool too. Just something I'm curious about. I've wondered, I've noticed.
Mm,
But you talk about that shame part, right?
mm,
And how that's so lined up in all of this too. And there is such an expectation, I find, in the larger cultural narrative in
mm,
Canada, where we live, anyways, around, and especially where I live, rurally, that there is a expectation that the therapist, when you go to therapy, they will fix you. They will tell
mm-hmm.
you XYZ, and then you're fixed. And then that's
Mm-hmm.
what happens. And so I think, again, like way back from a medical model type of therapy, which I think slowly we're moving away from, hopefully, and not
Mm,
pathologizing whatnot. However, I think there's still kind of those cultural narratives that we as therapists are noticing come up in us. And
mm-hmm.
also as clients show up in our office, whether it's practicum or post practicum, as expectations in a way, or an
Mm-hmm.
understanding of, well, this is what therapy is it not?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so that
Mm-hmm.
shame part and all of those things can kind of lead into all of that. Then we're feeling that shame when we're not doing it, when we are, when we're not meeting
Mm-hmm.
those expectations of clients, that cultural narrative. It's a lot because we're managing clients and also our own inner
Mm-hmm.
stuff as well as we're sitting there and after, before, all of it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And as you say this, I recently had a consult and this client wanted answers. They wanted a solution. They're in pain, they're struggling, and they
Fair.
wanted me to have an answer.
Yeah.
Tell me how you're going to fix this problem. Not in so many words, but it was the air,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
I could notice that part of me that was like, oh my God, what if I can't? As if it's my responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
If it's as if it's my job. And so it's interesting how all of that works back into this. Am I actually cut out to do this?
Oh.
Right? Can I be successful? Am I helping people?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I
And that's, I think, coming again back full circle.
Yes, I think as you're talking about that, I'm thinking that's also part of sometimes how and why that imposter syndrome,
Mm,
especially in the therapy world and therapists, can definitely start to spike a little bit as
mm,
well and become prevalent in the therapy world because of those kinds of expectations. And I mean, no shade or faults on that individual, right?
no.
We have things where we're like, oh, we need this fixed. We need this done. Can't do this anymore,
Yeah.
right? And we want answers. And when our brain
Mm,
is full of fear or uncertainty, we look to try and control and find those answers. So it makes sense, right?
mm,
But I loved your awareness in that as that
mm,
kind of spiked your own little bit of version of imposter syndrome. Even now, you're post grad,
mm-hmm,
you have hours of practicum, you have hours of supervision,
mm-hmm,
you've written tests, you've taken trainings, you've done all of these things, right? And it
mm-hmm.
still sometimes pops up for you.
And I think that that is, as we were talking, is the difference as you grow through this program and beyond, is this piece of self-awareness. And again, and what these things mean and being able to name them. At the beginning, yeah, I could have named that I felt a bit of imposter syndrome, but I didn't really know how that was then impacting me or how I showed up. Whereas now I can have that awareness, and that's all growth, baby. Like
Mm.
that's what we're talking about
Yeah.
through as we move through. And so I'm curious how your, experience of imposter syndrome shifted from coursework, if at all, to practicum. Like what was that like for
Mm.
you?
Yeah, I think it definitely did. I mean, as in my experience, as I went through the program and as I had more um, academic
Foundation.
success, that's
Mm-hmm.
right, and foundation knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
and again, an external validation saying, yes, you are worthy of this. So again, hello,
Mm,
imposter syndrome and things that Karen needs to be working on,
mm,
right? But that was helpful for me to go, oh, yeah, okay, maybe, I was, yeah, maybe this is something that I am understanding well.
mm,
And as I moved into practicum, the same thing kind of happened. As I got my feet wet a little bit more, as I started to trust myself more, as I got feedback from supervisors, from clients. And I mean, we have to be careful with that as well because we want to make, sometimes we can activate the people pleasing part of clients.
mm-hmm.
So, there's nuances in that as well. We could do a whole
Yes.
thing on that too. But as we
Yes.
had more experience, knowledge, validation, that was helpful for me in kind of
Mm,
lowering that a little bit.
mm-hmm.
However, some of my experience in this field has been some of a lot of chronic invalidation
Mm,
due to certain environments and whatnot
mm,
that I was in. And so that was tricky
mm,
in moving through and really was part of why I experienced so much imposter syndrome.
mm,
Now, as I've moved out of that and things have shifted in my life and I'm not in that anymore, um,
mm-hmm.
there's remnants of it, but it's not as strong. So I needed that external validation a little bit to strengthen my internal, yes, I actually am doing okay. Again, because that fear part of me wanted to make sure that I'm not
Mm-hmm.
harming people,
Mm-hmm.
right?
And I'm so glad you brought that up because I think that so often there's this idea that imposter syndrome is like a you problem. Like you're experiencing it. It's you, like, not feeling adequate or not having, enough information or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
But there are definitely external impacts, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're in a space that doesn't, encourage your curiosity or, give that, okay, wow, this is a tricky situation. I know it's the first time that you've kind of encountered this. Let's chat about it in that way. When you're already feeling this vulnerable, like, you know, want so badly to learn and want so badly to have, you
Mm-hmm.
know, to be doing things well and safely, right? Because that's the whole process of learning.
Yes.
When you don't have that, that can really amp up this, like, oh, well, they're acting as if I should know this.
Mm-hmm.
They're acting as if, and some of that's perception, some of that is just fact and
Mm-hmm.
reality of the dynamics that you're in. Um, I'm glad you brought that up because I think that there is that you want to be so careful with who you're connected with in this
Mm-hmm.
field. And this comes
Mm-hmm.
back to like um I remember going into, practicum, going into the field beyond practicum and just having this like idea that everyone was like me, right? Everyone was like, wanted to connect, wanted to, work together. We're all in a
Mm-hmm.
helping profession. We all have very similar
Yes.
self-awareness and
Lift each other up.
self-compassion, lift
Yeah.
each other up, like this, like very like positive, we're all human, but you learn there's a huge with the Facebook groups right now with the psychotherapy, like there's a lot of negativity,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I experienced again practicum and beyond in various spaces that is really impactful. And
Yes.
so being mindful of how you're connected and noticing when something doesn't align with you and your values, and
Mm-hmm.
that's not a reflection of you and your ability to do clinically sound work.
100%. Absolutely. You know that that's such an important point you make up because it can be something I don't want to say as small, but like something as you say, who are you surrounding yourself with? What is the
Mm,
noise you're listening to? What is the do you have someone in your life who's always talking about how, for example, there's a lot of talk in the therapy world about oversaturation or all
yes.
these things, right?
Hmm.
And there's truth to some of this.
Hmm.
Absolutely. And it's valid and it's real and it needs to be acknowledged and worked
Yeah.
through, definitely.
Hmm.
And at the same time, if we're constantly surrounded by that or a competitive nature of therapist versus therapist or
Hmm.
whatnot, it's very, very debilitating, exhausting, drowning in a sense. And
Mm,
so part of that is we also need to um, try and listen and pay attention to how we feel. How does our body feel when we're in the middle of these conversations?
somatic
When we're,
therapist.
uh-huh, when we are talking to people, when
Yeah.
we are on the Facebook's groups, when we are in this environment we work in, when we
Hmm.
are wherever, right? And
Hmm.
this is work applicable, life applicable, everywhere. How
Hmm.
does our body reacting? How do we feel?
Hmm.
What's your gut saying? Really important.
Hmm.
So, and I wanted to touch on one thing because this is kind of an image metaphor I use a lot sometimes in therapy, and I think it's just so applicable to this. And that's
Mm,
where, if have a you've planted a seed or there's a flower trying to grow in the garden. Stay with me, everybody. I really promise. Okay,
I'm
it is
with you.
okay.
Yeah.
I say some weird things. It's just who I am as a person and a
I love
therapist.
it.
if you have that flower, that seed, and you're trying to nurture it and grow it, and it's trying to grow into its true self and its calling and who it can be, and the
Mm,
most healthiest it can.
hmm.
If we're in an environment where you've poured cement all around that flower, it's not going to get what it needs.
Yeah.
But if you have an environment where someone is, fertilizing that soil and tilling it and giving it water and there's sunlight, man,
Mm,
watch it go, right? So again, back to what you're talking about, where it's not always necessarily like an internal us thing. There's nothing wrong with you if you're experiencing
hmm.
imposter syndrome. There's a lot that goes into it. And a lot of times, our environments, whether from childhood experiences,
Yeah.
right all the way up to adulthood experiences, and
Mm,
our perceptions of all of that and our inner narratives all really play into this. So to
hmm.
give yourself some grace and understanding of that, and take a look at what's your soil like? Do you have
Mm,
cement around you, or do you have people who are helping you grow?
mm.
Yeah,
I love that.
long-winded. Sorry.
Thank you so much for bringing that to our table. I love that because wow, what a accessible image first and foremost as we're kind of talking about these concepts. And also this piece of like the check-in
Mm,
and this spectrum of imposter syndrome. Oh my God, you experienced imposter syndrome. That must mean that you're not doing it well.
mm,
Or it's not about that.
that's
It's a
right.
check-in.
Yes, yes.
It's a something feels off. Maybe it's the fact that yeah, you didn't get a ton of support or there isn't a lot of confidence in you or maybe it's external or maybe it's just internal. This piece of like, yeah, maybe I do want to invest a little bit more time in learning about something or maybe I just need to take a pause
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and recognize what I've moved through
Mm-hmm.
in the coursework to get me here.
Mm-hmm.
It's that check-in, it's that cue for check-in, not bad,
Absolutely.
but just pause.
It's information, right? It's
Yes.
information.
Mhm.
And with information comes the possibility to do something with that. And
Yes.
if we stick our head in the sand and we can never have that self-awareness to take a look at it or the courage to, which is okay. We come to those things in our own time, and
Totally.
that's okay, 100%. When we're able to,
Mm.
man, beautiful things can happen then with the right tools around us too and the right tools within us.
Yeah.
And on a side note, I just have to say, because I'm pretty sure, I can't remember because it's like so many years ago, but I'm
Mm.
pretty sure that metaphor I've adapted from my very first fabulous supervisor ever, Pam Mosky.
Mm.
So I thought I better shout out and give her a credit because I can't
Love it.
remember. It might have been. So we'll say it is. Yeah.
I love
Anyways.
that. Yes. Yes. And I think, we have so much to say about imposter syndrome. Like, I
Mm,
think that, wow, the twists and turns we've been on, all connected, right? And
absolutely.
all part of this experience. And we've brought ourselves to practicum where we're talking about environment, where we're talking about those first sessions. But, in my experience at least, it's beyond, right? It's I would argue even more or different when you're out in the world by yourself.
Love that.
What do
Yep.
you mean no one's looking at my notes? What do you mean no one's going to, be following? And certainly you continue with supervision, but it's not as
Mm.
structured, right? It's not every week or every whatever your I think it was
Where
weekly.
you're at. Yeah. In that
Yeah,
journey. Mm-hmm.
right. So I think, that's worth its own episode too, imposter syndrome, out in the world
Yes.
beyond practicum, because then there's also added layer of finances, clients, client retention,
Uh-huh. Absolutely.
advertising, setting your prices. Oh my gosh. There's so many factors with all of that that we could talk about. And I wonder if it would be
Mm-hmm.
worthwhile to set that aside for the next one
I love it. I
or
think
another one.
absolutely. Because
Yeah.
all of those things definitely play in.
Yeah.
Imposter syndrome impacts all of those things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Love it. We'll do it
Okay.
again.
So
Mm-hmm.
what's your sum? Like what is the summarization of imposter syndrome through the MACP program
Hmm.
that you feel you've learned or gained insight on or
Oh man.
I know,
Um,
hard hitters here.
yeah, honestly, I don't know if I could even like it's such a
Mm,
gamut of self-learning and awareness and reflection and clinical learning of imposter syndrome and the whys and the impacts and the hows that it's all I can say is if you're on this journey, whether you're in the MACP program, you're debating going into it, you're graduated, you're a therapist, you're just someone in life who's not
mm,
related at all to any
mm,
therapy type of field stuff,
mm.
and you're dealing with imposter syndrome because it's everywhere with all of us.
Yeah.
Um, give yourself some grace. Self compassion is such a huge thing. Do a little research around from reputable sources around imposter syndrome and just do a little self awareness at the pace you're able to. Listen to your body,
Mm,
forgive your parts,
mm,
and yeah, give yourself a little kindness as you do that. It is a journey, it's a
mm,
process, even if that impatient part of you wants it to be done like that, because we all
mm.
got that one too. Yeah.
Yeah,
How about you, Is?
absolutely. I think for me, the main ones are, and you, what you said, so times two for that for sure. Um, you're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
You are not alone in feeling like you don't have anything together and that you don't know what you're doing. You're not alone in the fear. And, I do want to touch on comparison, but looking around, right? And seeing other people move through it. Maybe it's not the explicit conversation among your peers. Maybe open that up to be an explicit conversation to say, hey, how is everyone managing the
Yeah.
imposter syndrome, right? Which is
Love
always
it.
my take because it is normal and also normal if you don't feel it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And also fair if you're like, no, I feel pretty confident. Is that okay? Absolutely, that's okay, right? We want to encourage everyone to really, and I think, again, my final note is allow it to be a check-in.
Ah.
Allow it to be this, okay, where am I at? How am I supported? Can I take pause that allows this not to run my bus
Mm.
and see what comes of it?
Love it. Beautiful. I think
I
that's a
feel like
beautiful
that
way to
was
end it.
twisty
I
and
love that.
turny, but wow, was that, and for
In
me,
depth.
yes. And I also think for me, just like so much insight
Yeah.
and just, it's always, for me at least, I like to reflect back and see
Mm-hmm.
how things have changed and they will change for you if you're stuck in it and you're
Yes.
like, how do I get out of this? How do I make it feel like I know what I'm doing? Will I always feel this? You won't. It will change.
Mm-hmm.
It will move, in my experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Everything does. Everything does. Yeah. In its own
Mm,
time, in its own way. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Definitely. Okay.
Well,
Beautiful. I love it.
pick this
I love
energy
it.
back up. Thank you
Woohoo!
all for listening to our imposter syndrome
Part one.
charade here. I don't know what
Yeah.
we went on about, but I feel like there was a lot of good, maybe it was just therapy for us and you guys listened along and that was good
Could
too.
be.
So, um,
We're
and
glad you're here for that.
and maybe the real point of all of this is find yourself a therapist friend
Yep.
and hang
And
on
a
to them
good
tight.
supervisor.
Build
Mm-hmm.
your community and we want to be a part of it. So thank you for listening. Send us emails if you have thoughts. As we said, we'll probably do another imposter syndrome number related more to like post practicum, post grad. Um, Specifically, and if you got questions or thoughts, or maybe you want to come on, maybe you're like, hey, I want to talk about this too.
Ooh,
We're gonna
that
open
would be
that invite
exciting. We
up.
could have a guest, a co-host guest. Love
Yes.
it. Mm-hmm.
And we are talking about guests. We are thinking about guests for a number of different topics. So if there's something that you feel hot about that you did the MACP program for and you're like, I want to talk about this, get me on here, reach out. We're
Yeah.
approachable people. I would like to think we're approachable people.
We want to hear it. Yeah, for sure.
Yes. Yeah, so we'll wait by the phone for you guys to reach out.
Yeah.
And
Don't let
yeah,
that imposter syndrome stop you from reaching out. Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
You can start a
Yeah.
podcast even though you feel like you don't know anything, i.e. Karen and me. Here we are.
Jump in. That's right. It flows. That's right. I
Oh,
love it. I love it. I love
100%.
it.
Okay. All right. We're gonna leave you there and we'll catch you guys next time.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.